Hi, welcome to yet another installment of my Mass Effect 3 multiplayer class guides. I had never thought I would make a Turian Sentinel guide, but I received a request from one of our uh, forum community brothers by the name of Aburai. I believe that's how it's pronounced. And he told me that he hadn't seen a lot of people playing Turian Sentinels. Now that ran somewhat contrary to my experience. I always thought, well, the Turian Sentinel, everyone knows how to play it. After all, there was that thread, there's that thread, Turian Sentinel, really cool guy. And why indeed would the Turian Sentinel be a really cool guy if not everyone were playing him, and so on and so forth. So I thought I wouldn't bother with that. It's not to say I don't enjoy playing the Turian Sentinel. I actually do very much so. I don't know really if I have a favorite class, but I like the Turian Sentinel a lot. And so he requested that. And I want to say that these videos, for me at least, I'm not looking to capture glory. I'm uh, I'm the kind of guy who doesn't play a lot of different games. When I do play certain games, it's rather intensely, and so most of my attention these days, at least, is devoted to Mass Effect, specifically multiplayer. And I see this as a service to the community, uh, and the ability to exchange ideas, and so that's really what it's about, and helping people as well. Like I said, I've received a lot of positive feedback. People have benefited from my ideas and builds, and so I've learned from my videos and commentary, and so as long as that keeps on coming, I'm very happy to do these things to the extent that I have time. And since I have an odd work schedule, and half of my work is done at home, I often do have time. So, that said, the Turian Sentinel. I'm reluctant like I said, I was reluctant to do this, and also reluctant to talk about this because I think these two builds, well, it's not controversial, silly way of putting it. I, I, I have two builds that neglect entire powers. One I simply dubbed the Cerberus Geth build, and the other, I don't ever play Geth, but it's applicable to Geth as well, and the other is the Reaper build. Now, they're really simple because they're identical in every respect except with regards to the Reaper build. I take Warp and ignore Overload. And with regards to Cerberus, I take Overload and ignore Warp. So let's just go through the build, and both builds, although they're not that different. So let's go with all what they have in common. Now, thank the gods, it's very nice. The Sentinels got a nice buff. They got 10% extra tech, damage resistance, and an extra 10% power damage as well as the melee. And That's really good. So what do I go with tech armor? I would never forego tech armor. It's just too valuable, I think, in terms of now at this current moment in time, the damage resistance, but as well as the benefits, the powers. So starting with rank 4, it's kind of optional, but I like the ability to explode just in case. It's quite nice. It can stagger if you are in a bind. Uh, it's uh, it's pretty useful. So that's what I like for 4. I think 5% damage resistance is negligible compared to 30% radius and explosion. Then, for me, at least in the Turian, I guess you could try a wacky melee build, but I certainly prefer the 30% power. Now it used to be 20-30% power damage. That'll enhance everything from your armor explosion to overload to warp. Definitely a fantastic rank to take. And then I go for full armor protection, DO damage resistance 10%. I think cooldown, I might have said this before, as you see in almost all my videos, I almost uniformly kill with weapons. I think powers are nice, but I think for me, powers are a way to set up weapon kills. Whatever it is, if it's a body shot, a headshot, but it's always, for me, using powers, no matter what the class, is always a way to set up weapon kills. And so cooldown to me is not that important. You see a lot of debate on the forums, not so much debate, but rather argumentation going back and forth, saying, well, especially for power spammers, if you want to call them that, sorry, adepts and what have you. And so you'll hear, oh, you need a card effect, so you need a super low cooldown, so you can spam your powers. That's just not a philosophy I buy into. That said, you don't want a totally shitty cooldown, but you don't want to be in the negatives. I think, depending on how you play, anything 70% upwards is fine. So yeah, that's the reason why I don't take the cooldown reduction for tech armor. I don't take it for any of the Sentinels, although I don't really play the human one very much. But for the Krogan one, I take. Well, that's not true. For my Reaper Slayer build, I did take the cooldown, but that's kind of just optional. Then let's skip to the passive right away. Rank 4, I want to. Turians have powerful powers, and so instead of going for weapon damage, which I usually do, I want to enhance my power damage. And so I go for the rank 4 weight capacity power damage, gives you slightly lower cooldown. Then I go for rank 5, which I believe is 15% of power damage. And then I go, because I don't think cooldowns are that important, and I think it's much better to get the 10% stability and 10% weapon damage. And then your passive, the passive in this current build, you will have a 22.5% damage, weapon damage bonus, which is quite nice. And you also have a 45% weapon stability bonus, which is quite nice as well. I think in both the little snippets of videos I show you, I'm using weapons that actually have quite a lot of kickback. And on a Turian, with a little bit of stability, even if it's just 45% as opposed to 55% on a soldier that I usually go for, you do notice the difference. There's a lot less recoil on the Black Widow that I'm using. There's also a lot less recoil on the Saber I'm using. And finally, the passive, I max out fitness, the bottom row as usual. One thing I've seen, well, I think it was today, I saw a bit of debate on, was this idea that if you're playing a Turian Sentinel and you're not taking warp, you're just wasting your time. I don't believe that. I think the Turian Sentinel, even if you just take warp and you're playing Cerberus and Geth, it plays very differently to an human engineer, say. It's very, very different. It's more durable. It has a different style. You have the weapon stability. You have better weapon damage. It's not really the same at all, in my experience. Having said that, so let's talk about the Reaper build. The Reaper build goes for warp. What you want to do with this is, for rank 4, most certainly go for the damage. I'm not a big fan of biotic explosions because they're too situational. What do I mean by that? Yes, it is possible that you're going to be playing with friends who are going to be able to set up biotic combos, but in public games, and sometimes half the time I am playing public games, you can't really rely on those kinds of things. And half the time, public game people don't even know how to set off biotic explosions, don't even know what they are, really. Unfortunately, and I don't mean this, it's hard to say it otherwise, but a lot of public game folks are a bit clueless regarding these things. So go for damage, it's better. You'll benefit from it. And certainly for solo runs, like I just did right now, you'll benefit from it as well. Then for rank 5, most certainly take Pierce, for the simple reason that Pierce will enhance your weapon damage. That means when you're using weapons, you'll do a lot better. Notice how I really just need three shots from the Black Widow and one warp, and I can kill a brute, no problem. It's quite effective. It lasts for about 10 seconds. Pierce is very good in conjunction with a powerful weapon. I wouldn't waste it on something like the Predator, but certainly a Claymore, maybe a Talon, a Black Widow, a Saber. So there you go. And then finally, I would take the armor weakening and more damage to armor barriers. It's very useful against Reapers. And that's that. The Cerberus Geth build, quite simply, the entire top row. I use it as crowd control, so you want to maximize your overload, basically, and chain overload specifically. Get as many chains as possible for stunning effects and crowd control. Now, I remember one of my, I think one forum poster posted the point, why do you take the neural shock? Because it is a bit of an issue, right? You get a faster cooldown, and maybe it's useless if you want to get headshots. I don't think so. I think it's so valuable once shields are stripped off that you can completely just knock an enemy to the ground and just he's just out of commission. I think it's really valuable, so I would never forego that. Um, I think the last one is optional. If you want to completely remove a Phantom's barrier, then you go for that barrier evolution. That's what I'm currently running my Geth Engineer. But I think with the Turian, it's much more about he's much more durable, so you have to worry about things less. I'd rather have the extra crowd control, the extra overload, and that's that. Weapons are not prescriptive. I want to just say again, as I have these trolls who show up on my threads claiming I'm dictating to people how they should play. Certainly not. These builds are just my ideas and how I play. I'm a weapons guy, I like weapons, and so I would suggest high power precision weapons for this build, as I do for basically every build. And I thought I could have used either I could have used both the Black Widow for both Cerberus and the Reapers, or vice versa, the Saber. I've run both. I play with a variety of weapons, so it's really up to you how you want to play. What kinds of weapons, whatever weapon you're comfortable with. Brawl is also really good. Many people favor the Claymore. Uh, I'm an oddity. I guess I kind of only like the Claymore on the Geth Infiltrator. I find it's just better to have a range weapon. That said, the reason why I took the Black Widow is because it's very powerful, and like I said, I just need one clip and warp to take down a brute. Most of the time I can do two headshots. Well, not all the time, but at least one clip per enemy usually. Certainly for Husk, it's not an issue. And Ravagers, brutes go down very quickly with it, so that's the reason why I took it. But also it allows me to keep them at range and fire really across the screen without worrying about things. I do have to quickscope a lot in close encounters, but that's not that much of an issue. So there's that. The Saber is also very good against Reapers, I have to say. Yeah, and I use the Saber, of course, on servers. You do feel the benefit of the 45% in this particular build stability bonus. You really do. It's very nice. And also the extra weapon damage. Turians do a lot of weapon damage. Now, one point I brought that was brought as someone had said brought up was regarding overload and how there is an issue with Reapers. Reapers, in some ways, are the hardest enemy, especially if you're soloing, because you have Marauder shields, you have the shielded enemies, and you also have unshielded organics. In a way, Overload is incredibly useful for them. Probably a lot better. It is a lot better than Warp. But on the other hand, you also have menaces like brutes running around that you need to keep at range to the extent that you can. You also have Ravagers, which you don't need to keep at range, but you need to take them out because they're really powerful blast shooty thingies that they have. And then of course you have Banshees, which are barriers and armor for which Warp is conceived, basically. So it's a tough call, but if you have teammates, then you might be fortunate to have some of the overload to control them. It's a tough call. I really don't want to forego fitness. I don't want to. In theory, yeah, you could forego tech armor, and you could still make it work, I guess. But now, I'm running with 45% damage resistance. It was fairly significant. I wouldn't want to forego that. On top of the 30% power damage bonus, which is quite nice. I think I also do some tech explosions. Tech armor explosions can be very useful for enemies like Husks or even Phantoms if you're about to get stunned. Sorry, about to get attacked. You can it'll knock them back. I think you do need the detonation evolution though. And then in the following videos, I filmed my inglorious death. I got instant killed on wave 5 on the Banshees, and then stupidly instant killed on wave 4 of Cerberus. But let me just say that that indicates, at least with regards to Cerberus in particular, the pitfalls of the Turian. I created a group a while back of trying to support the idea of increased Turian mobility because, quite frankly, quite frankly, the Sentinel, it's a tough call. Certainly with a soldier, it's not even a question that his lack of mobility is crippling. The reason why I died when the Phantom attacked me is quite simply because I couldn't roll. If I had been any other class after that stagger, I could have rolled away. Yeah, I might have died, but I could have med-gelled and gotten back up. Not an option with the Turian. You cannot roll, and so you get punished for that. It can be argued that Turian Sentinel is very versatile and powerful, so maybe he doesn't need a roll. But as powerful as Marksman is, I mean, there's just simply no justification to argue um, that the Turians as a whole would be overpowered if they could roll. I just don't see that. Um, at least give them a hop, something. But it really is crippling, even for the Sentinel sometimes. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I play so differently to a human engineer. A human engineer can roll back every direction he wants. That's a big difference. But anyway, so you'll see in the vids, I do the first 4 waves of Gold, Reaper, Condor, and then I do the first 3 waves of Cerberus. And you just see basically how I play. But it's always up to people how they individually want to play. I should just mention, I'll probably mention this again. I think it's much better to do precision weapon killing. It's much more efficient. Now, I was helping um, I was helping a lady out who was benefit from my guides the other day, and I was trying to show her that it's important uh, to when you're playing, say, I'm sorry, it up to use stasis and then get headshots. Headshots are the key to, at least the beginning is the key to success. It's not always possible, but to the extent that it is, try to get your headshots in. This is my opinion. I think precision weapons and powerful headshots, or just precision weapons, period, are better than just power spamming. It does require more practice, but it's much more rewarding. And so that's how I try to play all my characters, all the classes, without exception. So, yeah. So that's the guide, um, more or less. I think I've covered all the points. But yeah, the Turian Sentinel, as it's been said in that thread, he's a pretty cool guy, to say the least. He's a very, very nice, versatile class. And I'll be posting this in the forums, and as always, thanks for watching, thanks for the appreciative comments, and I'll see you soon. Take care.